Everybody all right? It is Vegas, right? But that's not Vegas. This is trap music. Had to bring a little bit of Atlanta with me. Actually, Molly and I were from Decatur. And actually, this is the origins of trap jazz, Decatur, Georgia. So I had to bring a little bit of it with me. And what can I say? I'm excited to be here. I'm just thrilled that a little old public defender like me, and I say little as best as I can, got a chance to be here. And this is what I do. We just went from high profile, and now we're moving to me, and I am low profile. And Mr. Hirschhorn, who I've read all this stuff, I've been reading this stuff for years. I think I got it saved in my Dropbox. He gave you a little tidbit of what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to talk about trying those dead dog losers. He mentioned this morning, he said, hey, you do this, and this, except for with the dead dog losers. And unfortunately, that's what I do. I do a lot of dead dog losers. Let me ask this question. Hopefully I get a little participation. Who here tried a case last year? You tried a case last year. Who here tried a loser last year? Okay. Who here lost that loser last year? And I've been going to all these seminars throughout all these years. I've been practicing like 20 some years now, right? I've been going to all these seminars, and unfortunately, one thing which I think is missing is nobody teaches me how to try these cases, right? These dead dog losers. Where's my younger brother, my older brother, Mr. Jones? Mr. Jones, I got a question. And the question I got for all these presenters is, what do I do when I don't have a theme? What do I do when I don't have a defense? What do I do when I don't have a story? And of course, ideally, what do we do? What do we do ideally? You take a plea. This ain't rocket science, ladies and gentlemen. If it's a deadlock loser and you ain't got nothing to work with, it's time to have that heart-to-heart. You have that come to Jesus with your client, and you're just like, I'm going to do the best I can to work this case out for you, right? But sometimes you end up in positions where that just doesn't happen. Doesn't fall into place for you. And of course, ironically, Ms. Waynes, she talked about this book, which is on the list. And this quote is one that resonates with me. I got it from one of my colleagues in Atlanta, a gentleman named Michael Mears, who did a lot of death penalty work throughout his career. And this resonates with me because this is where I find myself at. I'm about to get my ass kicked. That's just the way it is. But I'm going to do it. I'm going to try to do it with style and aplomb. I'm going to do it to the best of my abilities. But it's still going to happen. So how are we going to do this? And then let's talk about some water here. And of course, I saw that Mr. Sullivan, I don't think he's a member of NACDL. Shame on him, because he should be. And for any of you who aren't a member of NACDL, I encourage you to join NACDL. For any of you who are not a member of your local criminal defense bar, I encourage you to join them, because that camaraderie is needed. Because what we do is essential, and what we do is hard, and what we do wears on you. And if you don't have somebody to back you up, somebody to support you, it will beat you down. Thank goodness I'm in a public defender's office, so I got people coming by my office every day to help encourage me, to help lift me up. And that's what we do. I noticed that I think there are like 1.3 million lawyers in the country, right? And of that 1.3 million, those who are, as you boil it down to, criminal defense lawyers, it's like around 10,000 that do this in and out for a living. It's a really, really small number. You'd be surprised the data shows that there are very few lawyers who try criminal cases. And lots of times we try really bad criminal cases. Now, someone would say, maybe that's what we should be doing. I'm in a jurisdiction where generally we try only the bad cases. I'm in DeKalb County, Georgia. DeKalb County, Georgia, for those of you aren't familiar, is sitting right there next to Atlanta, city of Atlanta. There's Fulton County, there's DeKalb County. Part of the city of Atlanta is in DeKalb County. So we have an urban presence, but then as you run out to the east of the county, we have a more rural presence. We got farms out there. We got farms and we got city. And of course, in the middle, we got the suburbs, and a lot of what happens in the city bleeds out into the suburbs. So we have a lot of urban crime. Well, most people consider be urban crime. A lot of violent crime, robbery, rape, murder, child molestation. We have a lot of those, and we try the bad ones because, especially with COVID, with the backlog, we're still trying to work out cases. I'm looking at trying a case on Tuesday that happened March 5th, 2020. Client's been sitting in jail all this time. He's finally going to get his day in court. It's not going to be a good day in court. It's not going to be a good week in court. It's going to be kind of ugly for all of us, regardless. But he's getting his day in court finally. And that's what I deal with on a regular basis. Now, of course, one of the things which is strange about where I work is I'm in DeKalb County. And for those of you who aren't familiar, if it wasn't for DeKalb County, we would not have a Democratic Senate. DeKalb County has about 800,000 people, and about 799,999 voted Democratic. That's what, honestly, it was like 80%. 80% voted for Biden. The rest didn't like Biden for whatever reason and voted for Trump. That's the type of county I live in. I live in a type of county where you're going to see young jurors. You're going to see jurors under 20. You're going to see old jurors. You're going to see people who, like, for the fun of it, even though they can opt out, they're 80 years old, coming into a jury selection. And you're going to see a lot of African-American jurors, because this is a largely African-American population. So it's an anomaly because the county in which I'm in, where I practice 99% of the time, is a somewhat favorable one. However, I'm in Georgia. In Georgia, they don't call it the dirty South for nothing. I was like shocked because the young lady, Ms. Delval, who spoke to you on yesterday, was telling you about Florida, right? And how you get voir dire on certain things. Like in Georgia, I can't voir dire on reasonable doubt. I can't voir dire on the burden of proof. For a second, I'm thinking to myself, shit, I want to be Florida man. But then I thought about it, like, no, it's a little too much going down there. But it's crazy because, so I got these dynamics working against each other. And what I have often is serious cases. And because in Georgia, the law is not very good, we have lots of mandatory minimums, and the mandatory minimums are very high. We have a parole system, which is not very favorable. So let's see, let me ask, who here does homicides regularly? Anyone does it regularly? Okay, what jurisdiction are you in? He's in Kansas. Okay, you're in Kansas. You got a case. Client is a homicide. Client wants to enter a plea. State agrees to a plea. What are you looking at for a range of a guy who's allowed to plea out? Shit, I'll take it. For me, 25 to 30. Because my prosecutor's thinking is this, and I got a progressive prosecutor. My prosecutor, she's black. She's a black female. She's progressive. Progressive. And if I got a client in what we'll call an imperfect self-defense case, where it's like, every fact's going good, but then all of a sudden it goes left, where he maybe shouldn't have done it after all. My offer is 25 to 30. Why? Because a life sentence carries a mandatory minimum of 30 years in prison. And of course, I'm in Georgia, and just by chance, if my client gets convicted and the judge don't like the way he looks, I can get LWOP. No, oh, any aggravation. First time offense. The judge is like, I don't like it. Oh well. So I find myself trying a lot of really, really bad cases. So let's make sure we're on the same page. We're talking about the same thing. These are two actual cases. Case one, case two. Case one, hotel shooting. Victim is shot twice in the chest, first two shots in the chest. Victim turns around, runs, gets shot 5 times in the back. There's a witness, eyewitness. We have surveillance video of the shooting. The client has a moderate history. You got 3 convictions, that's all. Mostly drugs and alcohol. He flees, he's arrested later, he makes no statements to the police. And the client is determined to testify in this case that it was self-defense. That's case one. Case two, what do you think about this one? Gas station shooting. The victim gets shot 1 time in the stomach. There's a witness, eyewitness, somebody works in the store. There's surveillance video of the shooting. Client, again, he has a moderate criminal history, 4 or 5 deaths, He flees, he's arrested later. He makes a statement to the police, denials. Now they got phone records, put them in the vicinity, but we know phone records, they don't nail them down, but it puts them in the vicinity. Even though he says he was in Atlanta, he wasn't in Atlanta. And this client will not testify at trial. Now, one case is bad, one case is unwinnable. Let's see. You're the lawyer. Man, which one's bad, which one's unwinnable? Which one's bad, which one's unwinnable? In your opinion, you tell me. Bad is one on the left, unwinnable is one on the right. You agree? Okay, and the one on the right is unwinnable. Okay. Yes, sir. Okay, difference of opinion here. Intelligent minds can disagree. Yes, sir. Okay. Now, I'll tell you my opinion. 1 is bad, 2 is unwinnable. And I'll tell you why. 1 is what you call your classic dead dog loser. Basically, you have a client claiming self-defense. Like, come on, dude. You shot him twice in the chest, he runs around, and then you shoot him 5 times in the back. This case, tried it last year. We're voir diring on self-defense, we're voir diring on fear, we're voir diring on, taking a human life, we're voir diring on all that. Client testifies, he testifies for 2 hours. He does a fantastic job. Jury gets the case. There's like 2 hours, we hear nothing. They come out, they say, we want to see the video again. Okay, they see the video again. They go back in. They come back out an hour later. We want to see the video again. They come back 3 minutes later, and he's convicted. Now, this case is bad. Now, I say it's not unwinnable because you got someone testifying to your affirmative defense. So basically, if the jury, somebody back there bought it. Somebody has some question about reasonable doubt, right? Because it's 4 hours. And I'm thinking to myself, I better not go back to the office because this trial may be over before I even get to my desk. Now, 2, I tried that one a few years ago. And the problem with 2 is, what is your defense? What is my defense? Victim gets shot. I'll give you a little more details. Client's in the gas station. He's playing the video games. Guy tells him to get out. They argue. There's a young kid, like 22 years old. He's working in the store. And client runs out and he grabs some cookies or something on the way out. So the store owner runs out behind him. And they meet in the parking lot, right up under the lights, clear view. They get into a tussle, and you see the flash of the muzzle, and client shoots him. Client runs away. Like I said, the police, they interview him. His story is, I was nowhere near there. I don't know what you're talking about. Actually, I was drunk that night in Atlanta. and like 10 miles away. That's his story. And then, of course, client doesn't testify at trial. He doesn't refute it. He doesn't clean it up. He doesn't give me a defense to work with. So in this case, I'm doing all the typical dancing around that we do in these cases. Guess what? The timestamp was off. Not guilty. Is that going to fly? No. They got a hat on the ground. They ain't got no DNA in the hat. Is that going to fly? No. I got nothing that's going to fly for defense. Basically, the witness, young kid, no criminal history, got a vantage point standing right there at the door of the whole incident. Got the whole incident on video. That's an unwinnable case. That's the type of case I'm talking about. Somebody help me. Help me try this case. What am I looking for in a jury? And that's how I end up in this presentation. Like, I'm throwing out some ideas, and I want to hear it from y'all too. Y'all agree? Y'all disagree? People disagree with me all the time. Jurors tell me you're wrong all the time. And even though I am sensitive, I will tell you that I am sensitive. I try to shake it off. And sometimes I am sensitive. Even though what I do is oftentimes pretty nasty. You know, because I've seen people chopped up, cut up, beaten up, you know, hammers, knives, machetes, guns, shotguns, all that good stuff. It is what it is. So what do you do and how do you try these cases? Yes, sir. I'm looking for crazy. Hey, did you read my materials? Okay. I don't have a case. I'm a rational guy. Exactly. That's why you're a famous trial consultant, isn't it? But he's right. And that's what we'll chit-chat about a little bit and try to get an idea of how do we find them people. Like I said, I call them pink unicorns because that's what they are. They're pink unicorns. You know, you're trying to find them, trying to identify them, hopefully get on the jury, and hopefully they'll maybe hang things up. So before you start trial, what do? You're like, what the hell? You're scared as hell. You're scared as hell. You're like, man, you got the guns pointed at you. You're crying. You're like, I don't know. What's my theory? What's my defense? What's my theory? What's my defense? Let me go back to one thing Mr. Hirschhorn said. I'll double back because a lot of things everybody say, man, y'all some good stuff out here. And like one thing Mr. Hirschhorn said, and I'll give you a little war story about how to never do this. Never defer opening, no matter how bad your case is. I did it one time. Basically, it was a gang case. My client killed 6 people. I got gang people coming in, witnesses coming in, DNA, everything's coming in. And I got scared and I deferred opening. Never do that. I'm just telling you from experience. Never do it. Never do it. Never do it. Because after all that amount of evidence came in, and then I had to do opening, it was worse than what it had been if I had just sat up there and talked about the Magna Carta and Bill of Rights, you know, in my initial opening. So, but of course, exactly. And you gotta get ready for it. And like, I'll run one thing by you. My boss, my former boss, she retired. I ran this by her like, hey boss, can we do a training on death before dishonor? And she's like, what about that? What's that mean? Like trying bad cases? And she said no. I was like, damn. Then I ain't gonna talk about it. But that's not true, because I've had a lot of experience, I've done lots of stuff. And it's just that this is where I'm at in my career. And of course, there's Mr. Finley down there. He was in Fulton, I was in Fulton for a little while, of course, past president here in NACDL. And that's where you try to be at once you once you do that woosah moment, once you're like, okay, we're going to do this. We're going to do this, right? We're going to do this. So of course, right, it's a day of trial. It's a day of trial. I'm going in there, and I'm a warrior. You know, as you can tell, Gladiator is one of my favorite movies. There's a scene there where Mel Gibson, he reaches down, he grabs the dirt, and he rubs it in his hand, and he's like, okay, let's do this. And that's what it's all about. I want to go in there. I'm trying to be as clean as I am. I got my client. Depends on where we're starting off at. He's probably suited too. He's suited. And yep, I had to tie his tie because he never tied one before. Or maybe I had to put some makeup on him because he may happen to have some swastikas on his head. Was it swastikas? Was it lightning bolts? Yeah, because Molly was with me on the case, and basically I was representing a skinhead. And well, he's become a skinhead or Aryan, whichever. And that's what you got to do. You know, sometimes you just got to do what you got to do. And we're ready to rock and roll. And I don't know if everybody does this anymore, but sure, you gotta have your hype music. And of course, I got mine. That's what it is. You gotta get hyped up. And that's true. Because where we at? We're going to trial. We're going to trial. It's showtime. It's showtime. We're going to trial. It's me and my client, more young lawyers, maybe intern. But look behind me, I ain't got no family. I ain't got nobody with me. It's us. And we're going to trial on this. So what are we looking for now? We heard it. I believe maybe Dyke mentioned it yesterday. One. All it takes is one. We've all heard that cliche, right? All it takes is one. Now, how many times have you gone into trial looking for one? Has anybody ever gone into trial looking for one? Really? Okay. Gone into trial just looking for one. It's a cliche that we all live with in this field. But realistically, you need three. That's all. Exactly. Right. Because of course I was going to say, especially like in Oregon and Louisiana, you used to have at least two. But you know, but thanks, what's that, Ramos, whatever I think the case is, you got it. Yeah, but you need at least, right. So one's nice, two's even better, and as the man just said, three is ideal. Three is ideal. Now, are you gonna get three? That's asking for a lot. A solid two be great. Most time at best, you're gonna get one. So what are we talking about? Unicorns. I'm not sure if anybody glanced at the materials, because unfortunately, there's not a lot of empirical studies on trying bad cases. I need you to do that, an empirical study on trying bad cases. But one of the things that got me here was that Unwinnable case. If anybody looked at the materials, that case hurt me. It hurt me real bad. I've still been trying a homicides and serious case for a while, and that case hurt me. The client was difficult. I had a case about 2 years. Had it from day one. The client was difficult. We went through the system, went up and down. We had an interlocutory. Of course, that failed. We come back. We spent a day and a half picking a jury. Spent a week on the trial, and the jury came back in. Give me a little more credit than that, my friend. 38 minutes. 38 minutes. I've invested 2 years of my life, and you've stomped all my hopes in 38 minutes. Really, 38 minutes. You've taken all my hopes and dreams. And like I said, it's a worthless feeling. We know facts determine cases. That's fair to say? You know, if you've read some of these books, they'll tell you, you know, that lawyers determine who wins. Not really. Facts determine cases. There are better, because I know that 80% of the time, 90% of the time, okay, just about all the time, I'm the better lawyer. I'm going to outlaw your other side. You know, basically, I spent time with the case, I live the case, I breathe the case, I've prepared, I'm ready for trial, but still it hurts. It hurts. And even though, sure, on the front end, I knew this is not probably going to go well, it still hurts when you hear that one-word verdict. Especially when you hear it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times. That hurts. And one time, well, recently, last year, I wasn't sure if I should be excited or kind of hurt. My colleague there, Ms. Palmer, she's with, which one you with? What network you with? Court TV. She does some Court TV stuff, right? So the case was on law and crime. And when I've been on law and crime like 3 or 4 times, and you know what that means. When the public defender's on law and crime, oh boy. Because, you know, because them TV shows, what? Does anybody ever win? Does anybody ever win? Shit. Okay, you say so. But so, of course, I'm on law and crime. And I made one of the year-end wrap-ups. And the wrap-up I made was one of the 5 worst defenses. Right, so like, do you laugh or do you cry? Because, like, you know, it's not focused on me, it's focused on my client who testified and did an awful job and got convicted. So this is what I'm trying to deal with, though. Finding people who are going to stop the train, slow the tracks, and maybe shake the state's boots a little bit. So, and of course, there's a rub to it. There's a rub to it. And every theory, every thesis, there's a counter thesis. And because when you're looking for unicorns, you're looking for them secretly. You can't look for these people out open. You can't show the state what you're looking for. And of course, a lot of times you don't get to build rapport because you don't want to build rapport with people because you don't want them to talk too much. Once they talk a little bit, the cat's out the bag. So you really don't want to get them in a conversation. I will purposely build rapport with the lady who I know is going to get struck. Usually of course, especially one person I don't want somebody's weak. Is there such a thing as a weak unicorn? No. So somebody who's weak and sensitive, I'll chit chat with her. You know, tell me about your feelings. What'd you go through? Oh, how was that? Oh, what was in your mind at the time which that happened to you? Do you have any concerns about this type of case? You know, I'll build rapport with her. She's weak, and she's going to get struck eventually. I'll spend my time on her. And sometimes, I got to admit, the government, sometimes they can be pretty dumb. And this lady and I, we're having a conversation, and they'll think that I like her. I'm like, hell no, I don't like her. We're just chit-chatting away because I'm trying to build some rapport so that later on down the line, for the people who really are our jurors, they'll be like, oh, well, you know, Mr. Queen, he's a kind of nice guy. You know, and they'll like me, you know. And Ms. Childress mentioned on yesterday, it's a whole lot harder when jurors don't like you. You know, if you got a good case, you can overcome that. If you got a bad case, you definitely ain't. And of course, you may have to rely on some stereotypes. Yeah. And I know one of the things we talk about here is don't rely on stereotypes. And, you know, you don't rely on stereotypes, but sometimes you may rely on stereotypes because you just don't want to ask too many questions. And then, of course, you have the disdain of your colleagues. They stuck me in this block. I don't know why, but I'm here, and this is counter-programming. I'm here for counter-programming. This is not how you do voir dire on a real case. This is not how you do voir dire on a good case. This is not how you do voir dire on a bad case where you have a defense. I want to make sure we're all clear on that. That this guy from Georgia did not tell us to do such and such voir dire on your armed robbery where you have an alibi. That is not what I'm talking about. So, and then of course, unfortunately, sometimes what we're going to have to do is we're going to rely on the government. Because, you know, they're going to ask all their little silly questions. You know, they got all their little questions, the same one they ask every trial. And you're going to have to listen to them, and you may have to maybe hold your tongue and not do some follow-up. That's the road. So one of the first things about these situations is you got to deprogram yourself. We've heard lots of conversation about knowing yourself. And one thing which is clear, each of us, we tend to side with jurors who we can recognize, who we can associate with, who we can like sort of, yeah, that's my type of person. You know, how often do you pick a juror that you wouldn't want to have a beer with? Now, oftentimes we shouldn't, you know, depends on what your case is. Sometimes, you know, but our natural inclination, and I know we was talking about on yesterday and today, is that the people you're comfortable with, the people you recognize, those are the ones that you're like, okay, yeah, I like this juror, I like this juror. But you can't do that. You cannot do that. And so it's counterintuitive. It ain't comfortable. It's against your intuition. The whole idea about bias, the hardest part is, like I said, first you must know thyself. When we discuss bias, a lot of people, y'all talking about it earlier, heard talk about it yesterday, is it, the thing about bias is you have to accept your own biases first. You have to know your own biases first, and that's very difficult. Especially, you know, because we're lawyers, a lot of us have a hard time being humble. A lot of us have a hard time accepting that this is what we like, this is what we're geared towards. And as I said earlier, not necessarily looking to connect with unicorns, because their job is to get on that jury and wreak some havoc. So, of course, one, are we going to get them? No, we're not going to get them. We're not going to get them. And of course, so what we're looking for? I got 10 ideas of people that we'd love to have. And of course, like I said, the thing is we're trying to wind a way to get them on a jury covertly, so that hopefully they can make some injustice happen. I don't know. Justice is a nebulous term. Of course, you know, ideally you want an anarchist. You're not going to get them. You're not going to get them because they can't shut up. They're going to come in, they're going to start spouting some anti-government stuff, and pretty much they're going to let the judge, they're going to let everybody know how they feel. Ideally, it'd be great to have them, but the chance to get them, it's not likely to happen. Non-traditional people. Okay. This you got a chance at. You know, they're not like the rest of the veneer. You know, somebody who maybe their background is a little different. They grew up on the other side of the tracks. You know, their history is a little different. They know the norms, but they don't necessarily subscribe to the norms of the area in which you're in. You know, this is the Molly Palmer. My dear friend, Ms. Palmer. You know, they give you a look like, but you're like, you're not exactly what you look like. And I say that because she always talks about how when she was my intern, I mischaracterized her originally. Not like, I didn't think I was gonna like her. I'll be darned, I ended up loving it. But that's how it happens. outsiders, transplants to the community. They got different values. It may have came from somewhere else. It's a very transient society we live in. And sometimes you got people who end up plopped down in the country who are from the city and vice versa. Independent thinkers. Ideally, you want to be a unicorn, to have to be somewhat independent. What we look for what? Where doing their own thing is number one. They believe in doing their own things, being true to themselves. And it may be somebody who's a successful entrepreneur. But it may be, where we get that juror who's like, you ask them what their job is, and they said, I've been a cook. How long have you been a cook? 3 months. And then you say, what'd you do before that? Well, before that, I used to work at a radio station. Okay, how long did you do that? About 3 months. And how long, and what'd you do before that? Oh, I used to work at a deli. Okay, how long did you do that? Oh, about 3 months. And then what did you do for that? Oh, I was at a warehouse. That type of person where you're like, okay, this person, there's a reason why their resume is 25 pages long. There's a reason why there are gaps all over the place. And like I said, the backbone of every unicorn is for them to be independent thinkers. Because when they get in that room, basically they got to withstand the storm. Scientists. Now, scientists are an interesting bunch. Obviously, they're very analytical. And I know someone mentioned yesterday about how the thing about analytical people is they're trying to figure. And they're trying to figure where you're coming from. Now, the thing is though, in my case, there's nothing to figure because they're not really going to analyze my defense because I don't have one. So they're going to maybe overanalyze the state's issues. And I say science because I had a situation where it was a dead dog loser. And the DNA expert was not familiar with protocols. They weren't familiar with the SOP. They weren't familiar with various levels of gradation, et cetera, et cetera. And I had a CDC scientist on the jury. And the scientist was smarter than the government scientists. And so that lady, she allied with another lady. She convinced the other lady how the DNA was trash because they didn't know this and they didn't follow the protocols and they didn't know the standards. And they hung a jury on a not pretty double homicide. And the jury hung on the not pretty double homicide. And then we tried the case again. Like the first time we hung 10-2. Second time, usually how many cases get better second time? None. The second time, actually the case got better because one of the witnesses didn't show up. That's why we try cases, right? Because sometimes you just never know what's going to happen. So one of the eyewitnesses didn't show up for the second case. So they read the transcript of the first testimony. And the transcript from the first testimony, it doesn't sound right when people are acting it out. It just doesn't have the same flair. So the second time the jury hung 7-5. Now the judge by this time, he's wasted about 3 weeks on these 2 trials. The judge the second time around said, I'm not trying this again. And the judge said, what's your client want to do? By this point in time, the client's been in jail 5 years. I said, well, Judge, he'll take time to serve. Judge said, well, Ms. Queen, what are you asking for? Time to serve. And the judge goes, 20-5, time served, get out of here. On a double homicide. You just never know. You just never know the way things are going to shake out, which is why, getting back to what I said in the beginning, we got to try. We got to try regardless. We got to put the time in, we got to put the effort in regardless. And God forbid, I've never seen a case I want to try once like this. I sure as heck didn't want to try it twice. And that third time, I probably would put a pin in my eye just to avoid that third trial. It's like the judge and I, we were like neck and neck. The DA's chomping at the bit because he's feeling defeated. He's like, it's supposed to be a slam dunk. And he's like trying the third time. You just never know. Especially like with scientists, they are a funny bunch. They are just a funny bunch because they see things their own way. And once they get fixed, it's hard to get them unfixed. The disabled. Has anyone ever tried a case with a blind juror? Okay. Because I know like in some jurisdictions, I think like California, you can't discriminate on the jury. If a blind person wants to be on the jury, you can't discriminate. Has anyone ever tried a case with a deaf juror? There we go. One back there. The closest I've come, I tried one with a hearing impaired juror, where we gave them a device, and of course the device broke down, and they didn't tell us. And then we had to like sort of redo part of the trial twice. But this is an overlooked class of jurors. Now, usually whenever a juror comes in and they're disabled, what happens? Let's be realistic. There's a pity party. We feel sorry for them, and we let them go. No questions asked. You know, judge is like, hey, we got any problem letting this person go? And both sides say, no, judge, no problem, let them go. Because of course, there's the inconvenience factor. You know, God forbid we got to follow like the Disabled Americans Act or something like that, you know, and we got to provide them ability to get in and out of the jury box, that type of stuff. So it's a voice rarely heard and it's neglected by society. And you never know, sometimes that disability may align with your client's disability. Then, of course, in this case, everybody know who this gentleman is? Stephen Hawking. And of course, Stephen Hawking, he's been dead for a few years, but his name popped up recently. That's why his name popped up. There is rumors of his friendship and other activities. And we'll leave it there because I don't want nobody to sue me. So, of course, you just never know. So some of these people that we take for granted, don't take them for granted. Sometimes you got to take a chance on the unknown versus settling for the known, especially when we're looking for unicorns. Bloggers. Does anybody like bloggers on a jury? No. No, generally we don't like bloggers, people who always complain about everything. People who think they know more than everybody, people who got all this stuff to say about this and that and whatever. No, we hate bloggers. If someone says they're a blogger and they blog on, especially I blog on the criminal justice system. Will you ever put them on? No. But something to think about. Obviously, they're dying for a captive audience. One time I had a juror, he did a blog, and of course it shows how many likes and hits, whatever he gets, and he had like 2. I'm like, obviously nobody else wants to hear what you got to say, but you never know. You put that person on a jury, what are they going to do? Non-English speakers. I know, about to get sensitive about non-English speakers. Now, in Georgia, the standard is that the person has to be able to understand the trial in English. That's the standard. Now, most times, non-English speakers, they are yes or no. Okay, I got a yes. My man over here said no. No, most times generally they're no, right? Most time we go no. Most time we'll say no. Now, of course, we're talking about, and of course, there's lots of beliefs behind that. You may have someone who's non-English speaker, they may be more fearful of being a juror, more fearful of going against the government. But oftentimes these non-English speakers, they are a very intelligent group. It's amazing how you'll have jurors that they'll say, in my home country, I was a doctor. Now that I'm here, I'm a nail tech. Because for whatever reason, they weren't able to continue their career here in the United States doing what they used to do. And then, of course, people who are non-English speakers from other countries, they do cut both ways. Oftentimes, I think we're disinclined because we are America. We are the land of violence. We are the land of guns. We are the land of high crime. That's how most countries look at us. And so oftentimes we're looking like, we really don't want those people because they're not going to be able to understand or accept this level of violence that we do here in the United States. But oftentimes, it's sort of the inverse. It's that they come to our country and like, well, that's your system. I ain't really buying it anyway. That's the way you guys do it. I don't really buy it because that's not how we did it in my home country. So I'm not going to conform to it. So again, it's a two-edged sword. But why not take a chance? And especially, if you have a bad case and they don't understand what the state's witnesses are saying, the government's witnesses are saying, is that a bad thing? If they don't understand all that legalese and jargon in the jury charges, is that necessarily a bad thing? Now, of course, you don't want somebody on the jury, you don't want the get-alongs. They're going to get it back and go on and get along. We don't want those, sure. But just thinking out the box. Someone who doesn't understand, someone who doesn't buy it all, why not take a chance on them? Fishermen. Every trial, you know, we throw out some things that don't really matter. Every now and then we throw out stuff that doesn't matter to the case, and we hope somebody's going to bite on it. And every now and then we get someone that does. There are some people out there who are simply gullible. There are some people out there who are simply susceptible. And of course, you look for people who have that certain naivete about them, who are like, you know, his jacket was red. No, his jacket wasn't red, it was orange. Red, orange, red, orange. Yup, reasonable doubt. Yeah. There are some people, they'll chew on that for a minute. Are they going to get you to not guilty? Probably not. Are they going to get you to hung? Eventually, they're probably not. Once somebody hits them with some reason. But hopefully, like I said, they can get you to an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours of deliberations and make the government sit over there and squirm a little bit. I'm satisfied. And of course, you know when you see them. And most of the time, what? We get rid of them. Someone comes in, they're a little strange, they look kooky, and we like, yeah, we agree with the state, we agree with the government, let them go. But why? Just based on appearances, based on stereotypes? But why? So I'm just giving you all some food for thought, something to chew on. And like I said, you end up in one of these low profile bad cases like I do on a regular basis. Jury questionnaires, we've heard a lot about them. I've used jury questionnaires on a few occasions. I use them on my quote unquote locally high profile cases, but I've also used them on a couple low profile cases. And what I've seen, and of course the photo here is because I'm not sure if you're aware, but there's a guy named Jeffrey Williams. He sort of goes by this name of Young Thug. He's on trial in Atlanta. And his questionnaire is in the materials. It's one of them long ones. One of them long ones. And the thing about this is with long questionnaires, you can hide questions. Hide questions that matter to finding unicorns. That's the key to a long questionnaire. A short questionnaire, I used a short questionnaire on a bad murder case. It was a bad case. And I was like, hey, judge, I want to do a questionnaire. And the judge was like, didn't your client do such and such? Why are we doing a questionnaire? I'm like, judge, I think we can get this done. I can have my voir dire done by noon. Judges love to hear that type of stuff, right? I can be done by noon. You let me ask this one-page questionnaire. Basically, I got 5 questions on there, just trying to get feelings about this, feelings about that, so I can try to interpret who we got. And you know what I did this? I did this last fall. I agreed to come here, and I was thinking about questionnaires, and I said, hey, why not? Because I said one of my colleagues last week, I said, hey, you got a bad case. I was like, really bad case. And I said, hey, what you voir direing about? He said, the usual stuff. What's the usual stuff on a bad case? And he was telling me, and I'm like, okay, so you're going to end up with jurors that you like that are going to convict your client. And that's what happened. We're going to talk more about it in the office later on. Because I wasn't going to rain on his parade. He's getting ready for trial, You don't do that to your lawyers. But I did the one-pager, and I was asking, how do you feel about jury trials? And how do you feel about defendants on trial for these type of crimes? Blah, blah, blah. And it's amazing the responses you get. And as somebody mentioned it, give them a number. Because what we did was this. You have one sheet where you have the number and you have the name, and they sign off with the oath. Then you have the separate sheet with the questionnaire, and you just have the number at the top. So you got to match them up later. But that way, it is true. It sort of makes them feel like it's kind of anonymous because they're not signing their name to the responses. And like I said, judge, you let me do this, I'm not going to ask any questions. The state can go do their thing, ask their same old lame questions, blah, 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 blah. And I'm not going to ask any questions. I'm satisfied with this. And the judge let me do it. Because like she's like, okay, if I can get you, Mr. Queen, out to shut up and talk for the rest of the day, keep us not staying until 8, 10 o'clock at night, cool. So questionnaires, use them. And like everybody's talking about, judges, they'll go along with them, especially if you're going to save time and trouble. So, wrapping up, nurturing these jurors, nurturing these unicorns. This is a slide I usually use, something like this in every opening. I think Mr. Hirschhorn said it. If you're not using PowerPoint, you got to use PowerPoint. Jurors expect it. It's the 21st century. Jurors expect it. I know I got gray on my head. That's why I shave it off. And it may not be the most comfortable thing in the world. Jurors expect it. I'm in an urban environment. Jurors expect you to do PowerPoint. Jurors told one of my lawyers, hey, we thought it was pretty awful that you weren't smart enough to use PowerPoint. Told him that point blank, because like the state used only state used closing, the state's doing PowerPoint while they're evidence, and he didn't. And I was like, trying to tell you, dude. Sometimes I can show you better than I can tell you. So with each one I tell them, you got to decide this case for yourself, ladies and gentlemen. We're not asking you to agree with everybody. When I ask you to get along, you got to decide this case for yourself. You're a jury of 12, but first you're a jury of 1. Because at the end of the day, you have to be able to stand up and tell my client that verdict. So nurture as best you can. Do the best to get in there. And if anybody got any ideas how to get these folk on the jury, please let me know. My email is right there. Because one of the things I like to talk about more is how do we try these cases? These regular old cases, the ones that 9 out of 10 times we're trying, especially in my jurisdiction, where you're not going to win, but you damn sure going to give them a hell of a fight. I appreciate your time. God bless you. Take care.
cases. Ian has a history of high-profile defenses, including Guantanamo Bay detainees, the man accused of blackmailing Stevie Wonder, and worked on the Ellison versus United States case out of the Ninth Circuit, helping to ensure the right of inmates to sue their warehousers, even though those people were privately contracted. I hear that Tim Zarillo, who's standing over there, has the real stories about Ian. So if you want the real introduction, you know who to see.
He's a liar.
He's going to tell us how to set him up and knock him down when the blue isn't true. Ian Wallach.
Hey, all right, now let me just say at the outset, whoa, coming down. A lot of what I'm going to be talking about relates to a case that we just completed. Some of you may know it. It was a pretty horrific case in Joshua Tree, where it was basically McMartin 2.0. And we're going to go into the facts, but it was pretty horrific, whereas absolutely insane, fantastical allegations were made against a completely, absolutely random, innocent person. And then later the evidence began to come in that established that, but the officers did something repulsive. They'd been promoted, they had gotten some flair, and they risked letting a completely innocent man spend the rest of his life in jail, subject to heinous, ridiculous charges, just to save their money, their status, and their name. And it was repulsive. So that's going to feed into what we're talking about here. Now, let me begin now with this song. A lot of you know this song. It's For What It's Worth. A lot of people think it's an anti-war song. It's not. It actually started in 1966 when Buffalo Springfield was the house band for the Whiskey A Go-Go in Los Angeles, California. And the neighbors got angry. And so they hired a whole bunch of police, and the police got in riots with the rockers. It's an anti-police expansion song. The riots were a big deal. Jack Nicholson, Peter Fonda got arrested. What shockers. But the whole idea asks a very fair question. How did this happen? How did police get to occupy the presence that they do today? And how do they get that shroud of credibility that we afford them? And what can we do as criminal defenders to show juries that they are what? What is it that we want to teach a juror or the jury that police actually are? Any guesses? What's that? Bastards? Okay, I'll take bastards. Some are, some aren't. Anyone else? Human. Exactly right. We want to show them that these are not super gods. These are not beings. These are just regular, day-to-day humans, flawed like the rest of us, end-driven, prone to bias, with something vested in the outcome. So let's talk about how we're going to do it. Here's the roadmap. I'm doing the introduction. In case you didn't know, that's what we're doing right now. We're going to do a history of the public perception of police. We're going to talk about this term, fear for my life. We're going to talk about the shroud of credibility. The jurors are unfortunately likely to afford the officers and what your job is going to be to undo. And we're going to talk about tools that we have to challenge those perceptions. We're going to show tools in practice. And then we're going to have a lead up to a great big emotional ending. We're talking about the road to the land of discomfort, because that's where good things happen. Lead up to a big emotional ending, but I'm going to be lying to you. It's not really an emotional ending. I'm going to pretend I forgot something and leave you with something really weird. Now, trust me. There's going to be prizes. Now, I know they gave you prizes along the way. They gave you prizes along the way. Let me tell you how this is going to work. I'm going to say the competition, right? And we're going to try this. It may not work. Up here's a couple of websites. One to join to renew your membership to NACDL. Another to donate money to the Foundation for Criminal Justice. Every 5 minutes, Tracy's going to see if anybody did it, if they sent the proof to this address. And the first person who ever does it gets the prize, and that's great. All right, fine. Now, I know what you're thinking. Hey, what happens if I put up money? I come in second. I propose this. One, you've either joined or renewed or given to the greatest and most supportive criminal justice organization there is. And two, it's a contest. People lose. I don't know what to tell you. It happens sometimes. So there we go. So let's talk about the media. Oh, I'm going to start right now. But this one's for public defenders only. That's right. If you're a public defender only, let me go back. And you want to sign up and spend the 100 or whatever bucks a month it is to join or renew, I will personally reimburse the first person who does that and sends proof to this number, provided, there's a caveat, that at the end of the presentation, you come up to me and you say, and you have to do this truthfully, Mr. Wallach, your presentation was amazing. It changed my life. It's all I ask for. It's not much. So, all right, let's talk about the evolution of the media's presentation of the cop. And I would propose to you that it wasn't really all that good, especially at the turn of the 20th century. And you know, as the years went on, the 1920s, we began to see the gumshoes, but they were private detectives, you know. Cops were there, but they were still pretty much considered relatively something we could make fun of.
Car 6 and 7/8, calling car 6 and 7/8. Proceed at once to Fuller Boulevard. Investigate strange noises coming from deserted house. Calling car 6 and 7/8. Car 6 and 7/8.
Why, that's me.
Proceed at once.
Now listen, we began to see some nice cops appear in the 1950s. We saw Andy Griffith, we saw Adam 12, and we saw some Marana cops still stick around.
These babies can go on.
Now, in the 60s and 70s, I have a bad joke coming, and I apologize in advance. We had these very smart but conflicted cops, right? And then that sort of trickled into the 70s, where we had some conflicted cops who might have killed their wives, but that's a mistake. So we just moved past on that. Going on to the 1980s, we're now talking about a collective group, right? We're talking about these Hill Street Blues, the Bochco #1 big hit, where all these cops were together and troubled. And who remembers the tagline from Hill Street Blues? What the sergeant would say at the meeting every morning? Anyone? What's that? Let's be careful out there. There you go. Good job. There's the Caboose. I'm going to explain what that is in a minute. And then there was the SWAT. We're beginning to see the emergence of this superhuman cop, right? This flawless, above humanity type of individual. And this spills into the 1990s, when now we're personifying these sort of alleged super cops. And then something happens in the 2000s. And in the 2000s, we get cell phones and we get video cameras, and the media presentation of the cop begins to change. And maybe we unfortunately start seeing images like this. And the stories we get are as bad. We start hearing about Rampart. We start hearing about sexual advances and assaults. We start hearing about blatant lying. These stories are growing and growing and growing. But for some reason, things don't change as far as jurors. They still have this ridiculous shroud of credibility. One thing I can't stand is you'll start to hear jurors accept catchphrases used to explain the most of horrific behavior.
Motorist Philando Castile said that he was afraid for his life and was just trying to protect himself.
The reason my client Jason fired his weapon that evening back in October 2014 is that he truly was in fear for his life as well as the lives of his fellow police officers.
I feared for my life. That's what Officer Alex Olson told Chattanooga Internal Affairs investigators about the night he fired his weapon responding to a traffic stop.
How did you protect and serve Sandy Bose that evening? I protected my life.
We have learned the officer who fired the fatal shots feared for his life as well as the lives of the people in the store. That's according to